8 years ago, I walked out of my marriage with nothing but a broken heart, a small suitcase, and a promise I made to myself. One day, the same people who laughed at me would realize they were wrong about me. But I never imagined that day would come at my high school reunion. The room was filled with familiar faces, people I hadn't seen in years, old classmates, old friends, and people who remembered me as the woman who lost everything. They remembered my divorce. They remembered my tears. They remembered the day my husband, Daniel, told everyone that I would never succeed without him. What they didn't know was that while they were busy talking about my past, I was quietly building a future they could never imagine, a future worth billions. And when Daniel walked toward me that night with his arrogant smile, he had no idea that the woman standing in front of him was no longer the same woman he abandoned 8 years earlier. He looked at my simple black dress and smiled. "Wow, Emily," he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I honestly didn't expect you to show up." I smiled politely. "Why wouldn't I?" He laughed. "Come on, we all know what happened after the divorce. You disappeared. I thought you would be somewhere struggling to survive." A few people around us became uncomfortable. They knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't greeting me. He was trying to humiliate me. But Daniel didn't know one important thing. The woman he was mocking was the founder and CEO of one of the fastest-growing technology companies in America. The woman he thought was broken had become a billionaire. And that night, I decided it was time for him to finally learn the truth. But before I tell you how everything happened, let me introduce myself. My name is Emily Carter, and this is the story of how losing everything became the greatest gift I ever received. If you enjoy powerful emotional stories about betrayal, second chances, and life-changing comebacks, make sure you watch this video until the end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications because we bring you more inspiring stories of people who survived betrayal and created a new life. Now, let me take you back 8 years. 8 years earlier, I was not a billionaire. I was not successful. I was not confident. I was simply a woman who believed she had built a perfect life. Daniel and I met during college. He was charming, ambitious, and everyone loved him. When he walked into a room, people noticed him. I was different. I was quiet. I loved creating things, solving problems, and dreaming about building my own business someday. But after we got married, my dreams slowly disappeared. Daniel always said, "Emily, be realistic. Not everyone is meant to be successful." At first, I thought he was just being practical. I thought he wanted to protect me from disappointment. But slowly, I realized something painful. He wasn't protecting me. He was limiting me. Every idea I had, he criticized. Every plan I made, he laughed at. When I told him I wanted to start a technology company, he smiled and said, "You, running a company? Emily, you can't even manage a household properly." Those words hurt more than I admitted, because they came from the person I trusted the most. Still, I stayed. I believed marriage meant supporting each other. I believed people could change, but I was wrong. The breaking point came after 7 years of marriage. One evening, Daniel came home and placed divorce papers on the kitchen table. I looked at him, completely shocked. "What is this?" He didn't even look guilty. "I'm done, Emily." "Done with what?" He sighed. "With carrying you." I felt like the air disappeared from the room. Carrying me. Yes, I built this life. I built my career. I built our reputation. You just followed along. Those words destroyed something inside me, because I realized Daniel didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as someone beneath him. Then he said the sentence I would never forget. "After this divorce, you'll realize how hard life is without me." I signed the papers with tears in my eyes. But what Daniel didn't understand was that sometimes losing someone who doesn't believe in you is the first step toward finding yourself. The day I left that house, I had no idea what my future looked like. But I knew one thing. I was finally free. And freedom was the beginning of my success story. The first morning after my divorce was the quietest morning of my life. I woke up in a small apartment with empty walls, a second-hand coffee maker, and a feeling I had never experienced before. Fear. For 7 years, my entire identity had been connected to Daniel. I was Daniel's wife, Daniel's partner, the woman standing beside him at business events. But now I was just Emily. And for the first time, I had to discover who Emily really was. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking at the divorce papers on the table. The words Daniel had said kept repeating in my mind. "You'll realize how hard life is without me." For a moment, I almost believed him. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't talented enough. Maybe my dreams were unrealistic. Maybe I really couldn't succeed. But then I remembered something. Before I became Daniel's wife, I was a woman with dreams. I was the girl who stayed up all night learning technology. I was the girl who believed she could create something meaningful. Daniel didn't take away my ability. He only convinced me that I had lost it. And that was the first thing I decided to take back. My confidence. The first few months were extremely difficult. I had to rebuild everything. I found a small office job to pay my bills. The salary was not much, but it gave me independence. Every morning, I woke up early. I worked during the day, and at night, I studied. I researched technology trends. I learned about artificial intelligence. I studied successful companies and how they started from nothing. People around me thought I was wasting my time. Even some of my old friends told me, "Emily, just find another husband and move on." But I didn't want another person to save me. I wanted to save myself. I wanted to prove something not to Daniel, but to the woman I had forgotten for years. The woman who once believed anything was possible. One night, while working late at my small apartment, I discovered a problem that many businesses were facing. Companies had huge amounts of information, but they didn't know how to use it effectively. I started thinking, what if there was a smarter way? What if technology could help ordinary businesses make better decisions? That idea stayed in my mind. For weeks, I wrote notes. I created plans, I researched. Then I did something I had never done before. I started building my own company. At the beginning, nobody believed in me. I contacted investors, but most rejected me. One investor even laughed during our meeting. He looked at my presentation and said, "Emily, you have a great story, but stories don't build billion-dollar companies." I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. Every successful person has a moment when someone doubts them. The difference is whether they stop or continue. I continued. I worked from a tiny rented office. Sometimes I slept only 3 or 4 hours. I ate cheap meals because every dollar went back into my company. There were nights when I wanted to quit, nights when I looked at my bank account and wondered if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. But then I remembered Daniel's words. "You can't succeed without me." Those words became my motivation, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to prove that my worth was never decided by someone else's opinion. 6 months later, something unexpected happened. A small business owner tested my software. At first, I thought nothing would happen. But a few weeks later, he called me. "Emily, do you know what you created?" I laughed. "What do you mean?" he said. "This saved my company thousands of hours. You solved a problem nobody else could solve." That was the first time someone believed in my vision. Then came another customer. Then another. Slowly, my small idea became a real company. The same woman who Daniel called a failure was now building something powerful. But while my life was changing, Daniel had no idea. He moved on. He continued telling people his version of the story. According to him, he was the successful one. He told our old friends, "Emily probably couldn't handle life after our divorce." He never wondered why I disappeared. He never asked if I was okay. He simply assumed I had failed. And that was his biggest mistake, because while he was celebrating my downfall, I was preparing my comeback. 3 years after my divorce, my company received its first major investment. The amount was more than I ever imagined. Suddenly, people who ignored my calls wanted meetings. Investors who rejected me wanted to work with me. The same industry that once doubted me started paying attention. But I stayed focused. I wasn't trying to prove Daniel wrong anymore. I was building something bigger than revenge. I was building a legacy. 5 years after my divorce, my company became one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the country. Magazine articles started featuring my story. Interviews started coming. People called me an inspiration. But there was still one person who had no idea what happened. Daniel. He still believed I was the same woman who walked away from our marriage with tears in her eyes. He didn't know those tears watered the beginning of my success. And then, after 8 years apart, the invitation arrived. Our high school reunion. I almost ignored it. Part of me wanted to stay away from the past, but another part of me knew something. Sometimes, life brings you back to old places not to remind you where you came from, but to show you how far you have gone. And that is exactly what happened. Because at that reunion, I would finally meet Daniel again. And this time, he would meet the woman he never believed I could become. The day of the reunion finally arrived. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like to return to that old school. The same hallways, the same people, the same memories. But I never imagined that I would walk through those doors as a completely different person. 8 years earlier, I left my marriage feeling invisible. That night, I entered the reunion as the founder of a company valued at billions of dollars. But I didn't arrive to show off. I didn't bring expensive jewelry. I didn't wear anything designed to attract attention. I simply wanted to reconnect with people from my past and enjoy the evening. I wore a simple black dress, kept my hair natural, and walked into the building with confidence. The moment I entered the hall, I saw familiar faces. People I hadn't seen in years. Some smiled. Some looked surprised. Some whispered, "Is that Emily? I haven't seen her since the divorce. I heard she moved away. I wonder what she's doing now." I heard every word. But for the first time in my life, those opinions didn't control me, because I finally understood something important. People only know the version of you they were present for. They don't know the battles you fought in silence. They don't know the nights you cried alone. They don't know the courage it took to rebuild your life. Then I saw him, Daniel, standing near the entrance, wearing an expensive suit and surrounded by people. The same confident smile, the same attitude, the same person who once believed he was the reason I had value. For a moment I felt the old pain, not because I still loved him, but because I remembered the woman I used to be. The woman who begged someone to believe in her. The woman who accepted being treated like she was not enough. But that woman was gone. Daniel noticed me. His smile disappeared for a second, then it returned. A fake, confident smile. "Emily?" He walked toward me slowly. "Wow, I almost didn't recognize you," I smiled. "Hello, Daniel." He looked me up and down. "So you actually came?" I raised my eyebrows. "Of course, it's our reunion." He laughed. "I just didn't think you would be interested in events like this anymore." A few people nearby heard him. They became quiet. I knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to remind everyone of my past. He wanted people to remember the divorce. He wanted to feel powerful again, but he didn't know I was no longer the person he left behind. "So," Daniel continued, "what have you been doing all these years?" His tone sounded friendly, but his eyes were full of judgment. Before I could answer, he added, "I mean, after everything happened." Everyone knew what he meant. After the divorce. After he left me. After he believed I would fail. I calmly said, "I've been working." He smiled. "Still working?" The people around us became uncomfortable. One of our old classmates, Sarah, stepped forward. "Daniel, maybe you should stop." But Daniel ignored her. "No, I'm just curious. Emily was always full of dreams." He laughed. "Remember, she used to talk about starting a company." Then he looked at everyone. She really believed she would become successful. Some people looked away. Others stayed silent. Daniel thought he was winning. He thought he was proving that his prediction had come true. But what he didn't know was that everyone in the room was about to learn something that would change the way they saw me forever. A few minutes later, the reunion organizer walked onto the stage. "Everyone, before we begin tonight's celebration, I want to recognize someone special who who has recently achieved an incredible accomplishment. People started looking around. The organizer continued. This person graduated from our school, built one of the most innovative technology companies in America, and recently appeared on the list of the country's most successful entrepreneurs. My heart started beating faster. I knew what was happening. The organizer smiled. Please welcome our former student and founder of Carter Innovations. A pause filled the room. Emily Carter. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then the entire room exploded with applause. People turned toward me. The same people who had whispered about my divorce were now standing and clapping. I slowly walked toward the stage, and behind me Daniel was frozen. His confident expression was gone. His smile disappeared. Because for the first time in 8 years, he realized he had been wrong. I took the microphone. I looked around the room. I saw old friends, old classmates, people who remembered my lowest moment, and I smiled. Thank you. Honestly, I never imagined I would be standing here today. I paused. 8 years ago, I walked away from a marriage that I thought was the end of my life. But sometimes, what feels like the end is actually the beginning. The room became silent. I learned that losing someone who doesn't believe in you can create space for you to discover yourself. Everyone listened. Success is not about proving people wrong. Success is about becoming the person you were always meant to be. The applause returned, but I wasn't looking at the crowd. I was looking at Daniel, because I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Later that evening, Daniel approached me again, but this time his attitude was different. The arrogance was gone. The confidence had disappeared. Emily, I turned around. Yes, he looked uncomfortable. I had no idea. I smiled slightly. No, Daniel, you didn't. He lowered his eyes. I guess I was wrong about you. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said something he never expected. Daniel, you weren't wrong about me because I changed. I paused. You were wrong because you never really knew me. And those words stayed with him. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's becoming someone they never thought you could be. After the reunion ended, I thought I had seen the last of Daniel. I believed that night would simply become another chapter of my life, a reminder of how far I had come. But I was wrong. Because the next morning, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and froze for a moment. It was Daniel. For 8 years, we barely spoke. The only conversations we had were about old paperwork and things left unfinished after the divorce. Seeing his name appear on my phone felt strange. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part wanted to know why he was calling. I answered. Hello? There was a long silence. Then I heard his voice. Emily, Daniel, what's going on? He took a deep breath. I wanted to talk. I almost laughed. 8 years ago, he had walked away without looking back. Now suddenly he wanted to talk. About what? Another pause. About last night. I leaned back in my chair. What about it? He sounded different. Not confident, not arrogant, just uncertain. I didn't know what you had become. I looked out of my office window at the city below. The same city where I once struggled to pay rent. The same city where I built my company from nothing. You didn't ask, I replied. The silence that followed said everything. Because it was true. Daniel never asked how I was. He never wondered if I was okay. He only created a story in his mind and believed it. I owe you an apology, he finally said. Those words surprised me, not because I needed them, but because I never thought I would hear them. Daniel continued. I was unfair to you. I closed my eyes. A younger version of me would have dreamed about this moment. She would have wanted him to admit he was wrong. She would have wanted him to regret losing me. But the woman I was now felt something different. Peace. Because I had already healed without his apology. Thank you for saying that, I said. But I don't need you to admit I succeeded. I needed you to believe in me when I was still trying. Daniel became quiet. Over the next few weeks, Daniel started appearing in my life again. At first, I thought it was just guilt. Maybe he truly regretted how he treated me. Maybe he wanted closure. But slowly, I started noticing something. His interest wasn't only about the past. He wanted to know about my company. He wanted to know about my success. He asked questions, a lot of questions. How big is Carter Innovations now? How many employees do you have? Who are your investors? At first, I answered politely, but something felt wrong. Because when we were married, Daniel never cared about my ideas. He never asked about my dreams. Now suddenly, he wanted to know everything. One evening, we met for coffee. Daniel looked nervous. Emily, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we stayed together? I looked at him. That question carried more meaning than he realized. Why are you asking? He looked away. I just think maybe we both made mistakes. I smiled. Daniel, mistakes happen, but choices reveal who people are. He looked hurt, but I continued. When you left, you didn't just leave a marriage. You left a person you believed had no future. He lowered his eyes. I know. And now that I have a future, you want to know if there is still a place for you in it. He didn't answer, because I had said exactly what he was thinking. A few days later, I discovered the truth. A business article mentioned that Daniel's company was struggling. His investments had failed. Several projects had lost money. The confident businessman everyone admired was not doing as well as he wanted people to believe. Suddenly, everything became clear. The phone calls, the apologies, the interest in my company, it wasn't only regret. Daniel needed something. And that something was me, not Emily, not the woman he hurt, but Emily Carter, the billionaire entrepreneur. I felt disappointed, not angry, just disappointed. Because deep inside, I hoped his apology was real. I hoped maybe he had finally changed. But I realized something important. Some people don't miss you. They miss what you can provide. And I refused to become someone's solution after being treated like a problem. The next time Daniel contacted me, I invited him to my office. He walked in and looked around. The building was impressive. Hundreds of employees, technology everywhere. A company created from the dream he once laughed at. He looked amazed. Emily, this is incredible. I smiled. Thank you. He sat down. I want to talk about something. I know. He looked surprised. You do? Yes, Daniel. I placed a folder on the table. Your real reason for contacting me? His face changed. What do you mean? I know about your company problems. He became silent. I know about your financial situation. He looked uncomfortable. And I know you weren't only calling because you missed me. For the first time, Daniel had no words. The man who once controlled every conversation was now sitting across from me, unable to explain himself. Then he said something unexpected. Emily, I did love you. I looked at him. Maybe you did. A tear appeared in his eyes. But love without respect isn't enough. The room became silent, because that was the truth. The marriage didn't end because we stopped loving each other. It ended because one person stopped valuing the other. And I had spent 8 years learning my value. I wasn't going to forget it now. Daniel left my office that day without the answer he wanted. But I knew something. This story was not finished. Because the biggest test wasn't becoming successful. The biggest test was deciding what to do when the person who broke you comes back asking for a place in your new life. And I was about to make a decision that would change everything. After Daniel left my office that day, I sat alone for a long time. The city lights shined through my window, but my mind was somewhere else. 8 years ago, I would have given anything to hear Daniel admit he was wrong. I used to dream about him coming back. I imagined him standing at my door, apologizing, telling me he made the biggest mistake of his life. But now that moment had arrived, and it felt completely different. Because the woman waiting for his apology was not the same woman sitting in that office. 8 years ago, I needed Daniel to choose me. Today, I had finally chosen myself. The next morning, I received another message from Daniel. Can we meet one more time? I need to explain everything. I stared at the message. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something inside me wanted answers. Not because I wanted him back, not because I needed closure, but because I wanted to understand how someone who once claimed to love me could walk away so easily. So I agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant away from the attention of our old classmates. Daniel arrived early. That alone surprised me. The old Daniel was never early. He always expected people to wait for him. But this time he looked different. Older, tired, less confident. He looked like a man who had finally realized that success and pride could disappear overnight. "Emily," he began, "I know you probably think I'm here because of your money." I stayed silent, because honestly I did think that. He continued, "And I understand why." He looked down. "But I want you to know something. Seeing you at that reunion changed something in me." I listened carefully. "When I saw everyone celebrating you, I realized something painful." He paused. "I spent years believing I was the reason you succeeded. I thought I was the one who built our life." He shook his head. "But the truth was, you were always the strongest person in the room." For the first time, Daniel sounded honest. Not like a businessman, not like someone trying to win, just like a person admitting his mistakes. "I was insecure," he said. Those words surprised me. Daniel admitting weakness was something I never expected. "I was afraid you would become more successful than me." I looked at him. "Is that why you always put me down?" He nodded slowly. "Yes." A painful silence followed, because finally, after all those years, I understood. Daniel didn't destroy my confidence because I wasn't enough. He did it because he was afraid I would discover I was. "I should have supported you," he continued. "I should have been proud of your ideas. I should have encouraged you." He looked at me. "But instead, I tried to make you smaller so I could feel bigger." Those words were powerful, because they were exactly what I had felt for years. But hearing them from him didn't erase the pain. An apology can heal a wound, but it cannot erase the scar. Then Daniel said something that changed the entire conversation. "I want to help your company." I immediately understood. There it was. The real reason. Even after everything he said, even after admitting his mistakes, he still wanted something. I leaned back. "Help my company?" He nodded. "I have experience, connections, business knowledge." I smiled slightly. "Daniel, my company became successful without you." He looked hurt. "I know, and it will continue succeeding without you." He became quiet. I wasn't trying to punish him. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I simply learned a lesson he never understood. Someone who abandoned you during your hardest moment does not automatically deserve a place during your greatest success. A week later, something unexpected happened. A business journalist contacted me. She wanted to interview me about my journey. The title of the article was, "The Woman Who Turned Heartbreak into a Billion-Dollar Empire." During the interview, she asked me, "Emily, what was the biggest challenge you faced while building your company?" I thought about it. Most people would expect me to say money, competition, failure, but my answer surprised her. The hardest part was believing in myself after someone I loved convinced me I wasn't valuable. She nodded. "And what advice would you give someone going through a similar situation?" I smiled. "Never allow another person's opinion to become your identity." The interview went viral. Millions of people read my story. Messages started arriving from women and men around the world. People shared their own experiences. People who had been told they were not good enough. People who had been abandoned. People who had lost confidence. And I realized something. My story was never really about becoming a billionaire. It was about rebuilding a person who had been forgotten. But while the world celebrated my success, Daniel was facing his own reality. His business problems became public. The same people who once admired him started asking questions. How did he lose so much? Why did he ignore the opportunities around him? Why did he underestimate the person who stood beside him? And for the first time, Daniel had to face the truth. He didn't lose Emily because she became successful. He lost Emily because he failed to see her value before everyone else did. Months passed. I continued growing my company. I expanded internationally. I hired thousands of employees. I invested in new ideas. My life became bigger than I ever imagined. But the biggest change wasn't my bank account. It was my peace. I no longer needed revenge. I no longer needed Daniel to regret losing me, because I had already won the most important battle. I had found myself. 1 year after the reunion, I received an invitation. Another gathering. The same school, the same people. But this time, I didn't feel nervous. I wasn't returning as the woman who had been left behind. I was returning as the woman who had created her own destiny. And little did I know that night would bring one final surprise. A moment when Daniel, my old classmates, and everyone who doubted me would discover the real meaning of success. 1 year after the reunion that changed everything, I received another invitation from my old school. At first, I smiled when I saw the envelope. A year earlier, that same place had been the location of one of the most emotional moments of my life. It was where Daniel tried to embarrass me. It was where everyone discovered my success. And it was where I finally realized that I no longer needed anyone's approval. But this invitation was different. It wasn't a regular reunion. The school was celebrating former students who had created meaningful achievements in their careers. And somehow my name was at the top of the list. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt completely different. The same people who once looked at me with pity now greeted me with respect. "Emily, it's so good to see you. Your story inspired me. I read about your company. I can't believe how far you've come." I smiled and thanked them. But deep inside, I remembered the person I used to be. The woman who entered that same room 1 year earlier wondering if people would judge her. The woman who thought her divorce was a failure. Now I understood something. Sometimes life doesn't give you the ending you expected. It gives you a better one. During the event, I noticed Daniel standing alone near the back of the room. He looked different, not physically, but emotionally. The confidence he once carried everywhere was gone. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't looking for attention. He was simply watching. When our eyes met, he smiled politely. I walked toward him. "Hello, Daniel. Hello, Emily." There was no anger between us anymore. Only two people who had shared a chapter of life and learned from it. "Congratulations," he said. "For what?" "Everything," I nodded. "Thank you." He looked around the room. "Everyone respects you now." I smiled. Respect wasn't what I was looking for. He looked curious. "Then what were you looking for?" I answered honestly. "Myself." Daniel took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about everything." I waited. "I spent years trying to prove I was better than everyone else." He looked down. But the person I needed to prove myself to was me. For the first time, I saw real change in him, not the fake apology of someone trying to get something, not the words of someone searching for another opportunity, just a person accepting his mistakes. "I'm sorry, Emily." I nodded. "I believe you." He looked surprised. "You do?" "Yes, because I can forgive you without forgetting what happened." Many people misunderstand forgiveness. They think forgiveness means allowing someone to hurt you again. It doesn't. Forgiveness means you release the pain. You stop carrying anger that only hurts you, but you still protect the person you have become. And I had worked too hard to become this person. Later that evening, the principal invited me onto the stage. The room became quiet. I looked at all the faces in front of me, people from my past, people who knew my old story. I held the microphone. When I was younger, I thought success meant proving everyone wrong. I paused. But now I know success means becoming someone you are proud of. Everyone listened. I lost a marriage. I lost confidence. I lost the person I thought I was. I smiled. But losing those things forced me to find something more valuable. I placed my hand on my heart. Myself. The room became silent. Then applause filled the hall. After the event, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "My husband says I will never succeed. He says my dreams are unrealistic." Her words immediately took me back to my old life. I looked at her and said, "Never let someone else's inability to see your potential convince you that you don't have any." She smiled. "How did you stay strong?" I thought about all those difficult nights, all the rejection, all the moments I wanted to quit. "I didn't always stay strong," I answered. "Sometimes I was scared. Sometimes I cried, but I kept moving forward." Years later, people would ask me, "Emily, what was your greatest achievement?" Most expected me to say, building a billion-dollar company. But my answer was always different. My greatest achievement was becoming someone who no longer needed permission to believe in herself. Because money can build companies. Success can create opportunities. But confidence changes your entire life. As for Daniel, he eventually rebuilt his own life. Not with my help, not using my success, but by finally taking responsibility for his own choices. We never became a couple again. Some chapters are meant to end, and that is okay, because not every ending is a tragedy. Some endings are the beginning of freedom. Looking back, I sometimes think about the woman who left that house 8 years ago with a suitcase in her hand. She thought she had lost everything. She had no idea that losing one person would help her find herself. She had no idea that the pain she felt would become her motivation. She had no idea that one day, she would walk into a reunion and stand confidently in front of everyone who doubted her. That woman was me. And this is what I learned. Never let someone else's opinion become your reality. Never let rejection convince you that you are worthless. And never forget the person who believes in you the most should always be yourself.